published by the Zionist Organization of America. April 1969. Liar 5729. Volume LIX Number 8. The American Zionist. Israel's 21st Anniversary. Contents, page 4. Howard Fast. The Jews. Story of a People. For Jews who seek to understand themselves and, more significantly, for Christians who must learn to understand a people that has lasted through millennia. Newsday. Fast writes as a Jew proud of his people, and bitter over their long vicissitudes of persecution, which reached a depth in the supposedly enlightened 20th century. The Wall Street Journal. Howard Fast has added a masterpiece to his glorious career. He incorporates the most dramatic episodes in Jewish experience, from the immemorial to our own time, offering a taste of Jewish life in all climes, all eras, commenting with a fervor, delineating artistically, and expressing a love that is indelibly written on nearly every page. The Jewish News. Other books by Mr. Fast include Spartacus, Citizen Tom Paine, The Unvanquished. Second printing. 72 pages of black and white illustrations. $7.50, boxed in a handsome mailing carton. Now at your bookstore. The Dial Press. By William Berkowitz. Economics and Ethics. America and Israel. A dialogue with Leon Kaiserling. This is excerpted from a chapter in a forthcoming book, edited by Rabbi William Berkowitz, entitled Let Us Reason Together. This volume is the fourth in a series based on transcripts of interviews between Rabbi Berkowitz and famed personalities held at Congregation B'nai Jeshurun's Institute of Adult Jewish Studies, New York. Leon Kaiserling has made leading contributions in the fields of economics and government. Rabbi Berkowitz, vice president of the New York Board of Rabbis, is a noted pioneer in Jewish education. Contribution of social sciences. Rabbi Berkowitz. Nothing that is alien to life, to living, and to humanity is alien to the synagogue and to Judaism. We are part of a people, part of a faith, that has always been concerned about the many facets of life, as they affect us as citizens, as human beings, and as Jews. It has long been my conviction that the social sciences have made and can continue to make an important contribution to the effective solution of the complex problems that confront our 20th century civilization. It is in this context that I would like to discuss some current questions with a truly renowned personality who is one of America's leading economists. Leon Kaiserling was a member of the President's Council of Economic Advisors from 1946 to 1953, serving first as its vice chairman and then as chairman. He was one of the draftsmen of the National Recovery Act of 1933, the National Housing Act which gave birth to the FHA, the National Labor Relations Act, and other legislation dealing with recovery, Social Security, housing, banking, and trade regulation. A distinguished lawyer in Washington, he is also a committed Jew, vitally concerned with Jewish life here in America and Jewish life in the State of Israel. As a religious teacher and as a rabbi, it has been my privilege to preach time and again that too many people in our society live according to a double standard. There is, alas, a dichotomy between what goes on in the synagogue and what does on in the marketplace. I have also said many times that one cannot atone by merely coming to shul on the Sabbath. There is a fundamental question of relationship of ethics to the world of economics. Yet many people say economics is merely a science of materialism, and there are no moral values connected with the economic way of life. Would you be kind enough to offer some comments on this question, the relationship of ethics to the field of economics? Mr. Kaiserling, of course, the original economists going all the way back to Aristotle, I suppose, although he was not technically an economist, were interested in the problems of the state and the problems of people. Aristotle associated ethics with politics, which was the forerunner of economics. All of the early great economists, beginning with Adam Smith, were actually moral philosophers. Economics really has its lineal descent from moral philosophy, and all of the great economists of the 18th and 19th centuries, down to the early 20th century, were vividly concerned with economics as a tool for bringing a better life to people. U.S. economics lost ethical stress. In the middle of the 20th century in the United States, as economics became more specialized, it lost its primary interest in moral and human values, and became more or less a servitor to very specialized problems, those of trade, finance, and taxes. It really then ceased to be economics in the grand tradition. Then the Great Depression, because of the acuteness and intensity of the human suffering, brought economics back to its great concern, with human welfare and human progress. This lasted for some time, then the pendulum swung the other way, and it is still swinging the other way today, unfortunately. Today, our economics does not have nearly as much interest in ethical objectives and moral values as I think it should have. I feel that this is the very essence of our problems. Rabbi Berkowitz, would you then say, comparing our country and our economy with other countries, that the ethical problem is more acute here in the United States than it is elsewhere? Mr. Kaiserling, the recognition that economics has ethical overtones is not currently as acute in the United States as in some other countries. I think that in Israel, for example, there is a very much closer relationship than at present in the United States. This is partly because Israel is in a very dynamic state of development. Israel is throbbing with the vitality of newness, of creativeness, and of giving people, page 26, the American Zionist, a chance. From that point of view, I suppose there is a closer identity between economics and ethics in Israel than in the United States. Yet if one asks which country places the most emphasis upon ethical and moral values as essential elements in the solution of economic problems, the answer, strangely and paradoxically, is the United States. Because of the very power of our productive resources, the very speed with which our technology is advancing, we can solve our economic problems only by turning to the ethical and moral tasks of seeing that the population as a whole enjoys and is not deprived of our economic production. There is no country in the world where the ethical problem is so essential to the economic problem, but I am fearful that at the moment we are not emphasizing this sufficiently. Rabbi Berkowitz, what are some of the ethical problems or challenges that face the American economy today? Problems of old. Mr. Kaiserling, they are fairly obvious. First of all, I suppose there is the challenge of the senior citizens, the people who have worked throughout their lives and made useful contributions to society, either in industry, in agriculture, or in the home. They find themselves, after reaching the age of retirement, without the means of maintaining an American standard of living. It is hard for us to realize that if one considers the unattached people in the United States living alone above the age of 65, the widow, the person who never married, the person who is living alone more than half, have incomes of less than $1,000 a year. In the multiple-person family, with at least one member of 65 or over, more than half of these families have incomes of less than $2,000 a year. These statistics may seem shocking to you. In view of our tremendous productive power and much unused resources, it is really quite shameful that our programs aimed toward the maintenance of a commodious living standard, for these older people are so greatly neglected. Undereducated young. If we look at the opposite end, the great ethical problem is the inability of many of our young people to pursue education to the lengths of their ambitions and their abilities, and the use of the services which they could perform in society if they were better educated. Very many of our young people are stopped, not by lack of ambition, not by lack of ability, not by lack of need for their services, but rather by financial inability to continue their education. This is a very serious fault in the economy, which has the productive power and the wealth-creating ability to do something about it. Even more serious is the problem of young people who have left school, and who cannot get jobs, who are in a never-never land between being out of school and not being able to do anything else, who are turning to the economic society whose precious values they have heard so much of, and who are then told that they are rejected. Of all of the young people in the United States between the ages of 18 and 23, who are out of school and not yet working, 18 to 25% cannot get jobs. This is a part of our great unemployment problem. This is driving them to all kinds of delinquency and aberrations. We blame it on the lack of religious teaching, we blame it on the family, on the era. It is really due primarily to the lack of our ability to muster the ethical determination to do something about it. Then there is the problem of the ill-housed, coming to about a quarter of the population, and the problem of the people who cannot get adequate medical care at a cost within their means. These are some of the illustrations, precise illustrations, of ethical neglect in an economy that has the physical, financial, and organizational resources to meet these problems. Rabbi Berkowitz, you stated that there was a closer relationship between ethics and economics in Israel than in the United States. Do you make that observation because of your work in that country and your familiarity with its problems? Study of Israel. Mr. Kaiserling, I was among those who in 1953 went to Israel in connection with planning the work having to do with economic problems there and the problems of fundraising. I have been there about every other year and have maintained an active interest in its economic development and have been in close contact with the people who have been engaged in financial and economic matters, including Mr. Eshkol, who was finance minister for a long time. Of course, these people are close to the picture. They bear the responsibility. I need not tell you that they do not take much advice easily from an outsider like myself. However, I think they would be better off if they had taken a little more of this advice, though I marvel at their accomplishments. I see them making some mistakes which they might avoid, as well as doing many superlatively great things. But they have a very healthy confidence in their own efforts and a very healthy skepticism about what others can do for them, such others who happen to be fortunate enough to have been born in a richer and more prosperous country. I do not particularly exaggerate or overemphasize what anybody here can do to help them, but I think they have an open-mindedness on this. I have been very glad to work with them and always will be. Rabbi Berkowitz, I would like to base a question on something you wrote, which is of great interest. In a little more than a decade, the population in the state of Israel more than doubled. The state was April 1969. Page 27. At that time, suffering from economic exhaustion and was bleak and underdeveloped, yet the output of industry and agriculture has more than kept pace with this population growth. Agricultural production increased more than 3.5-fold, industrial production more than 3-fold. This took place in spite of the fact that resources and tools were not available at the outset. The new population was not a manpower asset at the beginning. Houses, roads, public buildings had to be constructed, and all of this in the face of problems of security and self-defense. In the light of all of this, how did the state of Israel achieve economic stability? People the main asset. Mr. Kaiserling, because the primary economic asset in any economy is people. People can do wonders. There is no other real way of explaining why the United States has become transcendently the richest and most powerful economy in the world. We have great natural resources, but so have many other people in parts of the world. There is no real way of explaining why England, a tiny island with very few natural resources, was for a very long period of time a ruler of a fourth of the world. There is no way of explaining Athens or Greece, or any of the countries that at one time or another did great things, except through the people who did it. Israel has been blessed with an unusual combination of factors within its people. In the first place, Israel is an underdeveloped country economically, but it is not an underdeveloped country such as Africa. The pioneers who went to Israel were people who had had advantages. They were people who had idealism, and they had had some educational opportunity and had some skills. Therefore, the leadership of Israel was at an unusually high level for an underdeveloped country. Among the mixed population that is coming there now, it is true there are some coming from tremendously underdeveloped countries, but by and large, the majority of the people who have come to Israel in the past have come from moderately highly developed civilizations. Dedication to an ideal. Another advantage that they have is their dedication to a great ideal, and the essence of that is not economic. The essence of that great ideal is social and moral. The factor that has made the Israel economy progress as much as it has is the attitude of egalitarianism, the attitude of the responsibility of the state to the individual, and the individual to the state, the social idealism. I do not care whether one calls it socialism, or whether one calls it something else. This has been another great factor in Israel's progress. As the Israelis become more prosperous and have more per capita wealth, I hope they will retain the kind of distinctive idealism, and the kind of sense of social justice and the kind of sense of human responsibility that has had so much to do with their economic progress to date. This has really been the motivating force even more than United Jewish Appeal dollars, although I do not derogate those. Even more than their technical accomplishments, this idealism has made them stand out. The combination of idealism, of civilization, and the rather high standard of opportunity that some of their leadership have had is the human blend that has made them go forward. Growth programs at the core. Rabbi Berkowitz, in connection with Israel's economic progress, you said that growth programs were at the very core of all Israel's efforts. What did you mean, Mr. Kaiserling? This was in the framework that a nation may use unwisely what it produces. While you may have a situation where wealth accumulates and men decay, as Goldsmith said many years ago, nonetheless growth in production, growth in technology, growth in science and wealth-producing capabilities are the sine qua non for other kinds of development. In other words, you can neglect your social needs, even if you are rich, but you cannot meet them if you are poor. My statement means that Israel has properly placed its first emphasis upon the growth and building of the economy as a foundation. Rabbi Berkowitz. Please explain this quote, but Israel should not listen too much to the counsel of those well-meaning friends in the United States who do not understand Israel because they do not fully understand their own country. Mr. Kaiserling, concerning Israel, I have heard Americans who have gone to Israel who have asked, why is Israel doing this through Histadrut? Or why is Israel doing this through the government? Or why is Israel selling these Israeli bonds? Why don't they start with private enterprise? Now, if these people would merely recall our own experience here in the United States and how America has grown and prospered, they would see how Israel can enjoy exactly the same kind of prosperity. A story of bonds. I will give you a story which illustrates this very well. I talked at a bankers' meeting not too long ago about the sale of Israel bonds, and a banker said, "This is a funny thing. You tell me how prosperous the Israeli economy is, you tell me that we should buy these bonds, and then you tell me that Israel is so strong because they are retiring the bonds that they sold 12 years ago. They are retiring $5 million of the bonds. Doesn't it look a little bit fishy that they are retiring all these bonds, and as soon as they retire them, they want you to buy them all over again?" I said to him, "The reason you do not understand this is because you do not understand the United States. You do not understand your own bank." Suppose, page 28, the American Zionist. A man came to you to make a loan, and you told him that you would not lend him any money because he just paid back a loan that you made to him, that you lend money only to people who never pay back their loans. Do you see? This is a process which has gone on from time immemorial in the American economy. If it did not continue, all our banks and savings and loan associations and insurance institutions would fail. That is what I mean when I say that many of us would understand Israel better if we understood our own country better. Rabbi Berkowitz. I have another quote which we would like you to amplify. Unless the general peace of the world is shattered by a third world war, the economy and the people of Israel will endure and grow stronger. Then in parentheses you say, provided other free peoples who have joined in their effort through financial and moral participation do not shamefully withdraw. Whom do you mean specifically, and why shamefully? Mr. Kaiserling. I said this a few years ago, and I do not believe it anymore. A few years ago, even I, who had been in Israel a number of times, believed, maybe because I had heard so many tear-jerking speeches in the United States, really believed that Israel would not thrive and succeed and prosper, that Israel would sink under the Mediterranean, that Israel would be overrun by the Arabs if we in the United States shamefully withdrew. By this I mean if we started to let down on UJA and started to let down in buying bonds. This I do not believe anymore. As I have seen what has happened over the last few years and where Israel is now, what I say to audiences is this, and I mean it. If no American ever subscribed another penny to UJA, if no American ever bought another bond, if no American ever gave to the Histadrut, or to the JNF or to Hadassah or anything else, the people of Israel through their own work and their own blood and their own efforts would survive and ultimately would prosper. They would not sink under the Mediterranean, and they would not be overrun by the Arabs. That is why I am so proud of them, and why I want to do what I can to help them faster with UJA bonds. Now, this is no argument against the UJA, and this is no argument against Israeli bonds. These will help them to do it faster, do it with less pain, do it more securely, and will share the sacrifice and cost of doing it more equitably among us and them, as it should be shared. Also, they need these programs because they are getting stronger, not because they are getting weaker. Just as we need bigger charity drives in this city as we become a bigger city, just as we need more borrowing in the United States as we become a bigger country, so Israel needs more and we need to help more. That is why I am for these programs. Rabbi Berkowitz. If ever a cogent argument has been advanced to support UJA and Israel bonds, you have given it. The very fact that Israel is here to stay regardless of what we do should serve as a source of greater inspiration to us to make our contribution. Now Israel is doing a great deal outside of its borders. Can you describe what Israel is doing in shaping the future in the Middle East, what it is doing in Africa, and the aid and training that it is giving to some of these other countries? Mr. Kaiserling, to tell you the truth, if I found in Africa or in Asia or in South America people who were doing what the people of Israel are doing under conditions of great adversity, I would be just as interested in raising money for them, and it would not make a bit of difference to me where they were, what the color of their skin was, what their religion was, or if they had no religion. I am particularly interested in Israel because by a combination of human, religious, and ethical and historical factors, the people of Israel have done what no people ever have done before in human history, and no other people are doing now. Helping other countries. By the same token, I have had examples of how Israel is helping other people. In India, I was out in the countryside, and I was talking to a man in charge of a development project. He said, Israel is the one country where I can go to more than anywhere else in the world, to learn how to take a people who have nothing and give them something, how to give them medical care and economic training, and agricultural skills, a sense of the future, and do it under free institutions. When I returned to the United States, a friend of mine who is a Dane working for the UN called me up to tell me that he was coming to Washington to bring some African students who had been sent to the United States. He said, I would like to have you meet them, and I invited them to my house for dinner. Some of them spoke French and some of them spoke English, and we managed to converse. After a while they said, we learn a lot from the Americans who come to our country, and from the people from Western Europe, but the people we have learned most from are the people from Israel. They said this voluntarily. I asked them why this was so, and they told me it was because the people who came from Israel to help their country are closest to what the Africans are trying to do. They said they had visited the Ford plant in Baton Rouge. It's a wonderful place, but what's the use? How long is it going to be before we have a River Rouge plant? They were shown through the great hospitals and the great institutions. These are all wonderful, but not very relevant to Africans. American technicians and experts who come over to Africa are all very important. Continued on next page. April 1969. Page 29. By Dan Bawley. Israeli and American Jew. Kaiserling, continued from page 30, and the Africans do not run down the Peace Corps, but the people from the United States come from a different world. Israelis can really help. However, when people from Israel come over to their country, they are close enough to the Africans. They are ahead of the Africans, but they are close enough to them for their experience to be relevant. Therefore, they can really help the Africans. One told me, there isn't any use in our being taken out to see Tom Campbell's 500,000 or 5 million acre farm. That does not tell us anything. But what Israel is doing in agriculture is helpful to us. It was a great experience to see that this little country, which is so young, is already carrying out this kind of mission, this kind of lesson to the countless millions of Africa and Asia. Israel is giving this kind of lesson all over the world, within the framework of freedom. It is remarkable that Israel has had the highest rate of economic growth of any country on either side of the Iron Country, and can show that this can be done under a free society, not under the whip or the lash of the brutality of the authoritarian state, but in a free society. I think this is increasingly being recognized, and I think this is a great source of Israel's strength, and certainly a great part of Israel's mission, as it had been throughout history. The writer, a young Sabra, native-born Israeli, deals with the need for greater understanding between Israelis and American Jewry. It is very difficult for a Sabra fully to comprehend the power, the personality, the diversity and interests of American Jewry. There is, unfortunately, little direct dialogue between the parties. The distances are too great, and the image each side has created for himself of the other does not match reality. The attitude of the young Israeli toward American Jewry in the past has been somewhat ambivalent. Wholehearted admiration for the American success story, dislike of the hullabaloo of fundraising, appreciation of the deep American friendship, for Israelis and Israel, disappointment at the limited immigration from the United States, and the lack of intellectual communication between the two communities. Probably the greatest challenge facing them is to maintain the links between the two largest free Jewish communities in the world in the coming decades. In the past 20 years, most of the Zionist activities in the United States have been devoted to fundraising for Israel. It will take some time before a full evaluation of the magnitude of these funds is made and a description of its impact on the growth of Israel is presented. In the process of those great efforts, however, the dialogue which should have developed was neglected. Apart from visits of American relatives, Israelis' acquaintance with American Jews is very meager, and the American Jew hears little about Israel today, which is not connected with war and terror, even though there are many positive facets to life in Israel. It is the experience of the younger generations that the idealism of their parents has made little impression upon them. Zionism, as my immigrant mother from Providence, Rhode Island, knew it, leaves me as cold as it does most of my American friends of my generation. This does not mean that we have no common bonds. We do, even if they are expressed in a more pragmatic way. There are few people I know who would accept Mr. Abraham Schenker's definition of a Zionist, on page 11 of the December issue of the American Zionist. To be a Zionist means to re-examine the premises of our affiliation to the World Zionist Organization and its various parties. The Sabras will not understand it, nor will their parties. The Sabras will not understand it, nor will their American Jewish counterparts be impressed by it. Relations between American Jews and Israelis cannot be promoted on the basis of such abstractions. No one doubts the need for a new look for Zionism. Many of the Zionist fathers and leaders during the first half of this century, whether living in the Palestine of that time or in the United States, were either born in Eastern or Central Europe, or the children of parents who immigrated from there. Between them there was a common language and a common ideal. The tragedies they had survived, and the challenges they faced created a special bond between them. Today's young American-born Jews and Israeli-born Sabras are incapable of imitating them. The problems facing them are different and should therefore be treated differently. The American Jew in this, the American Zionist.